Before we dive into today's episode, I've got some exciting news. FutureLab, Australia's first longevity supplement range, is now available at Chemist Warehouse and leading health food stores. Now, this is a lot more than a regular supplement range. It really is a mission. The experts at FutureLab have developed formulas designed to support your well-being today, tomorrow, and beyond. Welcome to FutureLab, where we explore the cutting edge of health span and longevity. I'm Danny Urbinder, and with me is my co-host, Dr. Denise Furness.
Hello.
And Trevor Hendy.
Morning, guys.
Morning.
So good to be here. I'm so excited about today because I've literally got one of my best mates that we get to talk and dig inside of his soul a little bit and have a conversation.
Dig inside his soul.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll do
right.
that, I'm sure. We're going to do that. We're going to do that. He's ready too. He's ready.
So who is your best friend then? Or who's one of your best friends that we're going to be speaking to then?
Yes, well, other than yourself, of course, Danny.
Yeah.
And me.
So
No, you said I would know.
Yeah. So yeah, look, absolutely excited to have a planetary warrior, I reckon. He's a guy that's actually stood for everything he stood for the truth, but he's certainly stood for everything that's rattled the untruth. And he's actually copped it because of that.
Yeah.
You know, he's really, really said, no, there's lots more to this than this. And hey, what about that? What about that? He's constantly pointing outside of the status quo.
Yeah.
And out of the accepted.
Maybe a bit of a poster child for what happens when you push against the...
Yes, he's not the first person to be crucified.
No.
But he's certainly experienced it. So, of course, the incredible warrior, Pete Evans. Welcome, buddy.
Hey,
Welcome.
Thank you so much for having us. G'day, everybody. And honoured to be here.
So, mate, I think we'll have a few listeners of our show that will not know a lot about you, as in who you really are, because I want to explore with people just really quickly. I've got an opening question for you, so just let me set this up, okay? And we'll get into your life and we'll get into some of our adventures and things as we go on. But there's a term called straw man. And a straw man is basically like you put a straw man in a field to scare the birds off. It keeps everyone away from the crop. So the straw man's not real, but the straw man scares the birds. It looks real. And so basically when there's an old psychological warfare term called create a straw man. So what you do is you take a person and you take something they say that's dangerous to the status quo or dangerous to someone else's intentions. And what you do is you find a way to take something they say and turn it into something that puts people into fear or into worry, into their hindbrain. Oh, what are you talking about? You know, bone broth for babies. You know, I'm going to throw that one out first. You know, and then what it does is it creates this fear. So then people automatically filter the way they see a person. So Donald Trump's been a classic example of there's a straw man of Donald Trump and then there's Donald Trump. You know, is Donald Trump the person with all of his flaws and his whatever else he is, but then there's this orange man bad, you know, there's this straw man. I say the names and people go, oh, what are you talking about?
It's a tactic as a way of discrediting
It's
someone.
a psychological tactic to make sure that nothing that person says cuts through. So in this beautiful man, Pete's life, what he's done is, and that's why I'm going to ask this question, is because something natural to him, something organic inside of him has said, no, I want to challenge this or I want to challenge that. And by virtue of him just being him, he's taken on the status quo in lots of different areas. And when he's done that, he's actually rattled a lot of, bought and paid for areas, and he's rattled a lot of different things that we believe. That's just the way it is. My doctor told me that. My so-and-so told me that. You know, whatever it is. And one of the things, Pete, is that certainly out of you was created a straw man. So there's a straw man of Pete Evans. He's this controversial figure. He says crazy shit. You know, he says sunscreen might give you cancer. He says stare into the sun. You know,
I can give you a worse one. I looked you up last night because I knew we were, speaking to you today, and I've not met you before, but Trev says wonderful things. And I thought, I'll just have a look. Now, I did not even click on anything because the first thing that came up was actually it was intense. It had something about neo-Nazis, like the first thing that came up about you. And I was like, whoa. I was like, now I know what you're talking about, because what Trev is talking about, he's mentioned this to Danny and I and everything you went through. And to be honest, I didn't really know how hard all of this hit you. Of course, I heard a few things and then you disappeared, but I had no idea. And when that came up on the internet last night, I thought, wow, that's terrible. Anyway, I'm sure you'll get into it all, but just validating what you're talking about.
That's a good one.
That came up.
That's a good one.
What is that?
Obviously, anti-vax has been one used a lot lately, but things right through to autism connected to vaccination, things to using, med beds or bioenergy to help things. There's a whole list of things. I was just sort of reminding myself, because obviously I've been sort of standing by your side while all that was going on.
I'm sure Pete can probably tell us as well.
Fluoride in the water, that this thing in the water, blah, blah, blah. I got staring into the sunlight, didn't I? Oh, dairy potentially leaching calcium from your bones. Man, you've basically called out every single thing out there that's actually controversial or whatever. And what's actually happened is, out of all that, call it whatever you want. People can be ready for that information or not. It's just information. They're just viewpoints. And one of the things we'll touch on with Pete as we go into this is a lot of this has come from experts that he's spoken to, the leaders in their field around the world. And he said, guess what I discovered today? And then he gets shot for delivering the message. But a straw man's been created out of you, mate. And you've got this Pete Evans guy that people like to throw darts at. You're dangerous to society. You've set back medical advancements for decades and all this sort of stuff. So before we get into that, I want to ask you one question for the person listening right now. Who are you really? Not the straw man. Who's Pete Evans? Who's the guy that I've fallen in love with? Who's the guy that people that know you just go, my God, they walk to the end of the earth for you. Who are you really, bro?
Thank you for the introduction, and what a big question. I'm like everybody else. A being of unconditional love, working through the process of remembering that at all times. And that's pretty much it. I do not like to attach identity or labels to who we are, except for that, because that is the ultimate truth, we are love, as kooky as that sounds, when we can remember that, and then, there's no one right or wrong in their beliefs or their actions. It is really just about expressing ourselves and following our intuition and being flexible to change our minds and be curious as to that. Going back to your question, the number one question we could ask ourselves is, who am I? And that's been at the forefront of my curiosity as a human being for a very, very, very long time. And it will probably continue to be the number one question that I ask myself as I live through this experience of reality.
So beautifully said. And let's just touch on this for a moment before we break into the rest of it, because when you say we are love, we're all love, this is a big place to start. Let's set the tone, right? Do you think ultimately all that rubbish that I just rattled on that people are attacking you for, do you think ultimately this is more to do with the fact that you're getting challenged because you're trying to work out who you really are, you're following your intuition, you're talking about no one's right or wrong, we're all just exploring our true capacity, who we really are, et cetera, et cetera. Is that, like, if I framed it for you right at the start, is that the reason why you've been on this hero's journey? You've been turned inside and out, you've had things stripped away from you, which we'll touch on later. Is this the deeper context of why you're in such a battle? Is it because it's pushing you back to go, who are you really?
Well, I don't think I'm in a battle with anybody, to be honest with you. And, what you talk about being turned inside out, I have not been turned inside out through any of that external judgment. if you want to call it.
The straw man's been in the battle and the straw man got turned inside out, right? Like the actual, the identity.
Each and every one of us is a mirror for other people. You know this impeccably and explicitly, that what we see in others is an area, and when we judge what we see in others, whether it be right or wrong, good or bad, that is just a invitation for us, if we are triggered, either negatively or positively, to delve deeper into that question of who am I? And I have come to the realization, like many others, that when we recognize ourselves as a mirror for other people, and I'm not unique in this, as I said, everybody is that, whether it be your partner, whether it be your children, your parents, your boss, your employee, the list goes on and on. They just act as mirrors for us to identify where the potential invitation is for us to go deeper into ourselves, to ask, who am I? So I'm happy to play that role for as long as that energy seems to be attracted to this individual. And, I'm not unique in this. There are many other individuals. You mentioned Trump before. He is no doubt a huge mirror for other people to deal with their potentially limiting self-beliefs on who they are. There seems to be a category of people that really do not like Trump. When I look at Trump, I see him as potentially a very masculine father figure. And then for the people that really get triggered by him, have they got father issues, parental issues that are unresolved? Because he does command that sort of, I don't want to say respect, but energy from people, we all are like that, each and every one of us.
He presents with authority, doesn't he? He presents everything, including himself, with authority, which brings up that whole energy.
Well, it does. It really, really unnerves a lot of people because authority. I like listening to what Kelly Brogan says. She's a psychiatrist that was in the system and then chose to step out of that traditional or contemporary system. And she talks about the mother and father wounds. And, we've just been through mummy medicine, daddy government. We're witnessing this play out. And for individuals that choose to be sovereign and have identified those potential weaknesses, and not everybody has them, but potential self-limiting beliefs about authority figures, mum, dad, big pharma, government, big tech, AI, this type of thing, whether it be the judicial system. Some people really rely on that because they still want others to look after them. And for the individuals or the communities that have worked through those sort of self-limiting beliefs about authority and parental figures, that now, I don't like to use the word sovereign, but I'll use it in this case. You can sit back and watch the show or the entertainment as it plays out, and you can see it for what it is. It's just an invitation for people to see where these limitations are in themselves until they accept full ownership and responsibility of who they are, without playing the victim, without blaming, without being the perpetrator, without being the martyr or the fixer or the victim. And, I'd highly recommend anybody that's fascinated by this topic to jump onto Kelly Brogan's podcast and read her books. And because there's a lot of wealth of information in there that can help navigate through those questions of who am I? Why am I triggered by Trump? Why am I triggered by this crazy chef that's out there? Why?
Well, is it,
or whatever it may be.
He also seems to be, and I can think of a few other people like that, almost like a blank canvas on which people just project their shit onto him. So whatever it is that they don't want to deal about themselves, and they might unconsciously recognize certain features about themselves in themselves, but they don't want to admit it, they don't want to own it, and it's just an easy foil to sort of project that onto another person.
It's a popular foil to do too. We can all do it in agreement.
We've sort of done that throughout history, haven't we?
Well,
I'm wondering, though.
Sorry, you go.
I'm wondering, obviously, maybe I'm jumping ahead, and I know Trev's got some questions, and we are going to dive in this. But I'm just still fascinated. Your opening and how you have described that you are not in a battle, which I think is fantastic. I didn't know you were in a big battle, but obviously, all the stuff that's being said about you, and I saw something last night that would be triggering. How? I mean, you've already described it in a sense, but in reality, how do you deal with those moments when something comes back at you that is misinterpreted, which is, very inflammatory and really trying to sort of bring you down?
Yeah, I'm neutral to it. That's the.
Yeah, you've become the observer of it, haven't you? You've become the sort of still. Look at that.
Well, it's I'm sitting on our property and surrounded by trees, and every day it's a different climate, different environment. We've just been through a mini cyclone. We've been through we've been through droughts, we've been through floods, we've been through all the changing of the season, but also just the difference in every single day, every single minute. And you watch the trees. Do they react in a get upset by the rain or the sun or whatever, the wind or whatever it is, and for me, life is not about having expectations of what I think it should be. It's about living with the reality that exists. And surfing has brought me so much clarity in this concept, because as a surfer, when I go out, my intention is to ride the best waves that I can without having any expectations, and every single minute in the ocean is different. And sometimes I have an amazing time out of the ocean when it's choppy and rough and wild, equally as enjoyable as when it's calm and perfect and just rifling, which it was today. So you learn to ride the waves that are present for us without trying to control if I chose to only surf when it's perfect, what a disservice that would be to my evolution as a surfer and the enjoyment that I can have. So I'm saying this because we can focus on those stories that are made up by people that are paid to create sensational stories. That's their job, that's the game, that's the agenda, that's what gets eyeballs, sensational headlines. That's the game. When you realize that is the game, and I've been in this game for quite a few decades, you get to see what it is, and it's just like, okay, well, today it's a little choppy out there, I'll just ride this wave to the best that I can, I enjoy it. Yeah, I do, because obviously I'll
hold my breath today. I'll go under this wave a bit longer,
Well, but that must have been a process. I mean, if you've been in this game for decades, when you first started sort of getting those sorts of attacks, it must have affected you at the beginning. How did you learn to detach yourself from that and recognise that it is the game that it is?
And I'm interested to know if you've ever retaliated. Have you ever had the moment, even in the early days, where maybe what Danny's saying at the beginning, was there retaliation, or you've always been able to maintain this perspective and ability to deal with it?
Try answer both those questions.
Yeah, sure. It's fascinating the words that you're using, attack and retaliation.
Yes,
I find that fascinating, because our language and our vocabulary creates our reality. It's so often overlooked and underestimated, the power of our words.
The power of that.
If I could give any advice, which I do not like to give too often unless it is asked, but I will interject here and buck what I normally don't do. The language that we use, like, if I saw these things as attacks, then I would no doubt play the victim. If I saw this as something that I need to retaliate with, I would then play out the perpetrator. Or to to combat that, to be the fixer, be the martyr. And I've witnessed this.
To get one back.
So, and then you're just in this constant fight or flight, this stress type reality, instead of, again, they're just stepping back and just going, there also is a part that where anything that happens in your life, you have manifested it. You have created it. That's that full accountability, responsibility. So I take full ownership and accountability and responsibility that I have created this persona or this reality in which I do attract what you would call attacks. And I'm grateful for it, because it is another invitation to go deeper and go, okay, well, what is the big picture of this? And I've come up with so many different responses and answers to that question. Why am I manifesting?
What are some of the top? What's the top answers that you have at the moment? Why are you manifesting this?
What is the big picture? Yeah,
because it's
what is the big picture right now?
Because it's absolutely perfect. Everything that has ever happened and will ever happen is absolutely perfect for myself in this present moment. So that's what I see, and that's how I react. Or react is a shit word too.
Yeah.
Perfect in what context? Do you mean lessons that you should be learning, or
well, for myself and for others, like the awareness that these types of conversations or those types of headlines bring out, again, it's that mirror. This must be playing out for some reason or reasons for myself and for others. And then detach the expectation of actually trying to find out the answer or the reason for that, and just accepting and trusting and surrendering to the process and loving unconditionally the entire process, so that you can stay in a state of neutrality. You
say that so easily, but it's as if you just do that. Where in fact most of us really struggle with that, to detach and to accept and to almost submit yourself to just things playing out, even though they, might otherwise be perceived as harmful or a threat. To do that it's a skill, and it must have been learnt. Or did you just find that that's just been your personality throughout life?
I would definitely say some very deep psychedelic or entheogenic medicine sessions have given me remembrances of who we are, or who I am, and it doesn't differ between myself and anybody else. Okay,
so psychedelic epiphanies.
Can I just say on that, Pete? I just want to say for the astute listener that if they went back 3 or 4 minutes in this conversation, when you very first said, "I've been seeing this and viewing this as perfect," and even a little bit before that, before Danny asked you, there was a moment when you said it where you just went into stillness. And there'll be a few people listening that would have felt that there's this stillness in what you're saying. It's been the recognition that this is happening for you, not to you, has been such a profound thing, and that the change that you have been going through is happening through you, for yourself and for others. And ultimately, because there's a process around for you, to you, through you, all the way up to by you, I created this, Wow. So at some level spiritually, this being named Pete Evans at the moment has gone, wow, I want to have this journey and this lesson around my true power and who I really am, and reconnect with, let's call it source consciousness or whatever we want to call it. So I just want to acknowledge that, because there'll be people listening that would have went, oh, I just felt that. I just felt what he said, because there's a readiness for some people to step through that threshold and to go, what did you just say? Did you just say I created all of this? Did you just say I can take responsibility for this? Because that moment right there is the moment that you cannot be controlled by anything. The moment you recognize this is all my creation, it's all perfect, is the moment you are out of the game, out of the system. And Danny went, how did you learn that? Which is a very, because I don't act like that. And Denise went, wow.
I was, because I was like, I want to be like that.
Humans don't, we are biological beings that have certain responses, and we're certainly enculturated.
Well, that's one view, that we're biological beings.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's to go down rabbit holes.
That's one part of the view. That's
But we're certainly
Inner body,
conditioned
mind, and soul
and
control, yeah.
enculturated to behave in certain ways.
Absolutely.
And
Conditioned, patterned.
let's face it, most of us, if not all of us, have been, up until probably the age of 7, we're pretty much working on the same level.
Yep.
And it takes a lot of effort and insight and knowledge and experience to break away from that, and courage.
Yeah.
And that's what
Well, I
Pete
hope we get
seems
into
to have
that
done.
a bit more too, because I
And
think
I'm
there
just
is
intrigued to know how you can just
Yeah.
so casually and almost as if, you just detach and, away you go and surf.
Because some of
Most people can't do
some
that.
of the things that are being said is that I saw something, very serious, what I would consider extremely serious last night, and to be able to detach from that is I'm listening to you, and it's the best response. I'm so open to hearing this, and I think this is wonderful. But like Danny said, I would imagine very difficult for most people to have that response.
Yeah, I'll interject here, and we need to be careful. I should even that saying's wrong.
You've stirred the studio up. It's good. You've stirred it up. It's good. This is
In
good.
a good way.
I'll go back to the language of the vocabulary that you're using at the moment, because I've just heard from both of you. It's difficult. It's hard. It's an effort. It's a huge thing. These are just spells that we've created for ourselves. That everything to. Why does everything have to be difficult and hard for you?
It doesn't.
No. And you also said most people. I would invite you to rephrase that or contemplate when we take on that position where we know what most people are doing. Because it can be such a trap for us, because you're taking ownership of everybody else and how you think it is for them. It's, and I'm not trying to be a prick here or anything like that.
No, I think you're right. By the way, I'm not taking it like that. I'm genuinely listening to you and finding this fascinating, because you are correct. What I'm really telling you is me.
Yeah.
I'm not I might say most people, but really you're 100% correct, Pete. I'm expressing my feelings and making an assumption that that's everyone else's feelings, but really my feelings are, I've seen something that I imagine would really trigger me, would upset me. I'd hate for people to associate with me with something like that or be against me. So then I'm bringing that to the table and assuming that most people will respond like that, and you're not. So now I'm questioning you. But you're 100% right, and I love everything you're saying.
Well, I'm 100% right for me, and I guess what this brings up for me from hearing both of you talk is about fear of judgment, because that can be a huge fear for most people.
It can be.
Well, I've read books that would, they've had the observation that some of our greatest fears in life that have been documented is fear of public speaking, fear of being judged, fear of death, fear of abandonment, fear of being alone, fear of our infinite potential or unlimited potential, which is why people may sabotage themselves when they're starting to go up the ladder, because it's whatever the ladder is for them.
Denise can tell you a story about this, but yes.
We discussed this morning. Trev is really, really providing those insights.
So when we can identify what our individual fears or self-limitation beliefs are around our reality, that's the invitation to go, well, why have I sabotaged myself in this relationship or this career or this endeavor? Or why did I not accept that promotion or that date to go out with somebody that I thought maybe was above my pay grade or something like this? Where are my limiting self-beliefs? I was watching a great series last night with my wife, It's the third time I've watched it. It's Tom Hardy's produced TV series called Taboo, and I don't know if anybody's ever watched it, but it's only one series, and it's fascinating. And the thing that I picked up the most in that series over the last few nights of watching it is the main protagonist, the main character, Tom Hardy. He keeps continuing to face his fears. Like, he wants to really dive into facing the fears, and it's an invitation where we find these limiting self-beliefs, and I'm not saying you have to do it. I would never tell anybody what they should do in their reality. But that is one of the things that I have been very, very curious about, whether it be my fear of sharks, fear of public speaking, fear of being judged, fear of death, all of these things. And when I find these issues is a shit word, but when I find these imbalances that still create a sense of fear or doubt, I like to then, what are the best tools that I have available to me, if I've got them at the moment, or do I need to go on an adventure to work out what there is out there in this reality to help me as a tool, whatever it may be, to delve deeper into that. Why am I still fucking a little bit shaky in this part of my life? So that's what I like to do. I sort of, I get off on it.
You've just described the process. So my earlier question was, how did you get to this point? You've actually just described the process.
Yeah.
You want to and are obviously keen to challenge your fears, to explore them, to discover them, and to challenge them so that they don't limit you and that you can be free in your life. That seems to be the process that you've actually adopted.
Yeah.
I want to throw...
Please,
I was going to say I'll throw something else out, because not only the process, that's cool, but also where that innate desire came from. So you and I first met kind of unknowingly when you were working for Vito, my best mate, and you were apprentice chef or something like that, and doing dishes when we'd come home with all our fish at 11:30 at night and after the restaurant had closed, and you'd be cleaning up. And we first interacted then, but without really knowing we had. And then we came back together many years later on Namotu. And I walked onto this island that's crazy for sort of partying, and No Rules Namotu it was called. It's the most incredible place. It's the most beautiful place to visit now, to go on a surfing holiday. You were creating the whole kitchen. You were actually setting up the food. We'd had this idea with Benny Wilson and a couple of others that we were going to create this different experience on Namotu, upgrade it. I was sort of bringing a little bit of the spirit, bit different, a few different viewpoints. And Ben says, I'll put Trevor in with Pete. So I walk into a tiny little room, about 9 o'clock at night, and there's two single beds side by side, and you're laying on the single bed, and I go, "Oh, Pete, I'm Trevor," and we kind of hadn't realised that we'd met earlier. Anyway, you said to me, "Oh, mate, just to let you know, look, I'm not really into the partying on the island. I like to get an early night and everything else. So I'm just hoping you can kind of, keep it, down and all that sort of stuff." I went, "Mate, don't worry, I haven't drank in 15 years or whatever it was." And he's basically saying, "I want to get an early night, keep it down." At 1 o'clock in the morning, we're still talking to each other, going, just having the best time talking about life and everything he'd realised. So I use that two examples, because from that moment on, we went through some crazy things together, and we've worked on different things. But that Pete Evans that I walked into that room, that was on that journey, that was the Pete Evans between the apprentice chef, Hugo's award-winning. You're the guy. You were the man, mate. You were rocking around town. You had everything at your beck and call, all the prettiest girls, you basically were calling the shots big time in that societal thing of winning. You were winning, your brother, all that sort of stuff. So I'm interested in, before it gets to the process, where did this spunk come from, this spark that said in you, "No, I'm going down the wrong path here. I want to wake up. I want to change. I want to do things differently," because there's a challenging family upbringing, a young guy out on his own, awards, got the world at his feet. And then I walked into this guy that was ready, you had changed. You were ready to actually be your own person. And it was a whole process after that. So tell us quickly about that. What happened before the process? Where did this come from? What did you go through? Like, what made you want to be the Pete Evans we're talking to now based on what you'd experienced up until then?
Wow. All right.
It's huge.
Okay, so...
Because there's a real backstory here. There is a backstory of how you became so convicted in your journey here. There's something that brewed in you, the seeds that were planted.
Well, one of the seeds was actually in that apartment in Surfers Paradise that I shared. I got a job as an apprentice chef to move out of home. That was my priority. Got to move out, got to leave the nest at 17. I wish I had left at 15. I love my mum and we had a great time together, but I just knew I needed to be independent. I wanted to do things by myself and explore that. And I remember in that apartment in Surfers Paradise, I forget the street that it was in, but I was
Thornton Street?
I think it was Thornton Ave.
T Street?
Yeah. And that was one of my first places I lived, and I think it cost me $27.50 a week because I shared a room so with somebody else that wasn't there very often. And I was working, and I had my first LSD trip. And in that apartment, and I was 17, and I'll never forget it. It was one of the most life-changing experiences for me. As a very shy teenager, stepping out of the world and having a heavy dose of LSD or acid, and
what happened? What did you see?
Well, everything just expanded. The veils of reality changed. What I thought was real, like anybody that's ever taken a psychedelic, you realize very, very, very fucking quickly that what we are experiencing is a fraction of the unlimited potential that we can access.
Yep.
And
spectrum of light.
Oh yeah, I was like, wow. This is such a unique experience and a gift that I chose to, full responsibility, accountability. I'm not recommending psychedelics to anybody, We all have our own journeys. And that was one of the tools that really opened my awareness to other states of being. It's like, I felt so small as an individual up until that point, and then that experience just expanded everything for me. And over the coming decades, I have curiously sought out these types of experiences because they exist. Our brains, for some reason, and our spirit, if you want to get woo-woo, we have a relationship to this reality that can be very, very expansive and very, very challenging at the same time, but also very rewarding to our pursuit of truth. You mentioned the word truth right at the start. Our truth, our individual truth. And so that has been something I've been very grateful to experience, and it's something that I respect in the most respectful ways as well. As I said, I don't recommend it. I would never tell anybody to do it. But for me, it's been a wonderful tool.
So when that's early on,
yep.
And then you went through the stardom for a while there.
Yeah, famous, right?
The famous. You were the guy. What did you notice about that? Because I know you've shared with me before things about that you viewed even the way we were cooking and what we're preparing and what we're all addicted to cooking and, how much of this went in. And there was a bit of an awakening around the role that food and nutrition plays in our consumption and our compulsions and our addictions, and certainly the trap that we're in. We set a trap for ourselves because we just keep feeding from the same sort of energy. So what did you discover through chefery and through that famous period, and your own experiences with that, because I know you also wanted to turn your own health around, and you noticed how unhealthy chefs were. So what was some of the impulses in there in the early days that set you off on this path?
Early on, I was 19 and I discovered Tony Robbins' work, Anthony Robbins, and I went to one of his 3-day events in Sydney when I was 19, and that really, again, opened up my awareness, because the things in his books and other people's books that I read voraciously at the age of 19, 20 and onwards about self-help, self-improvement, spirituality. I did spiritual courses at the age of 20, 21, 22. I studied Reiki, I studied massage, I studied kinesiology, while I was also doing my chefing work. I was just fascinated by this world. Chefery. I was just fascinated. I was fascinated more so about the spiritual and human potential side from a very young age as a young adult. Because I wasn't taught that information at school. And I was just like, wow, there's a whole world of information out here that can really benefit individuals and possibly populations. So I went down the deep dive of all of that. I remember going to Transcendental Meditation, doing the TCM course when I was 19, and then attending Sri Chinmoy's course when I was 20, and then going into all of these different facets of that spiritual self-improvement world. And I loved it, I thrived in that experience. And at the same time, I also had a business and businesses that I was involved with my family, to be a chef. So what did that teach me? The chefing side of the world taught me resilience, the amount that my body and mind and spirit could endure in a high-pressure situation for a couple of decades, working 80 to 100-hour weeks in a tiny box with other misfits, and I use that term affectionately. So that taught me to overcome my fear of what is possible with the human body. And no doubt, Trev, that you can relate to this as a professional athlete. Professional chefs push their bodies and minds and emotions to the extreme, like many different industries.
Often to breaking point. Yep.
Oh, yeah. Which is why a lot of chefs end up, not all, but some of us end up alcoholics, drug addicts, problems with relationships, and the list goes on and on and on. And I got to experience all of that, which I'm so grateful for. I got to own a nightclub in King's Cross for 11 years during the peak of my sort of so-called fame. So I got to experience what owning a nightclub in King's Cross was like, and everything that sort of follows through from that identity and from playing that character, and to experience it. And
King of King's Cross.
Oh yeah, I loved it. So I got to experience that, and the TV world was such a huge invitation for me to face my fears of being seen and heard. That was probably one of the greatest blessings for me, to step up to the plate into that arena, because up until that time, I was very happy in my box with my team of chefs in the restaurant industry. I moved up the ladder to gain confidence, face my fears of being a leader in that industry. And then when television came along, to be invited to be a part of that, that was my greatest fear at that particular point in time, because that was a whole new level of being seen and then being judged. So that was a great apprenticeship for me, and it took me many years of persistence and using the tools that I could find to help navigate my way through that process of fear. And my whole intention was to get to a place of neutrality, where I could speak on a stage in front of 1,000 people, or be on a television show watched by millions of people, with no hesitation or fear or insecurity in how I would be judged or what I would say or how it would be perceived, which is where I'm at now with you guys. Like, 2 minutes before I walk in here 2 minutes before, I don't care what I say. I don't care what I look like. Yeah. I don't care who hears this. I don't. Yeah, and I shouldn't say I don't care. That's probably the note.
You're not concerned. You're not worried.
You're not worried about being judged.
I'm neutral to whatever flows from this or any of those things that I got to that point of neutrality, because that's always my goal. Can I get to that point where I will not be swayed emotionally by external forces? That's and I'm not fanatic about it, but I like to play with that, play with that. I guess adventure is probably the best thing. So, and then to answer
treat it like a game and see it as an opportunity.
And then to answer your question about the health side of things. I've always been fascinated by this, and it wasn't until a few major upheavals in my life, and then I discovered my beautiful wife, Nicola, and she was reading a wonderful book called Primal Body, Primal Mind, and she invited me to read it. So I read it, and all of a sudden things just, all my past sort of 20 years in the kitchen and my past experiences facing those fears, everything just sort of locked into place. I was like, got it. This, I could see it, and we all have this skill and gift, if we want to call it that, where we know when things are perfectly in flow for us. And sometimes when we're looking back through our life, we're not sure of the reasons why we're being invited to go through these adventures and challenges that we perceive as challenges. But once we can get to that place of then, and it happened to me when I read that book, I was like, got it. I can see the future, but I also saw the past of everything that I've been through. Like, okay, sweet. Now, how do I change my thinking to that way for the rest of my being? Like, how can I stay in that state of trust, acceptance, surrender to everything that is happening to me? Because I know from this experience that it is always, as you said before, Trev, it is working for me, and I am creating the experience perfectly for myself at all times. And that took 40 years for me to get to that point. It's 38 years to get to that point. Yeah. Like, got it.
Have you ever wondered what a healthier, stronger future you might look like? With Melrose Future Lab, Australia's first longevity supplement range, you can now optimise your health span routine by supporting cellular energy, metabolic well-being and muscle maintenance, as well as much, much more. And you can find this range at Chemist Warehouse and leading health food stores.
I hope people feel that 38-year overnight success, that interesting, because that answers the question very much about when we came back together in that period, that's the shift you were going through. It was like, because you went, paleo chef, and you started inviting people out of the programming and the thinking that was most commonly applied in society. Oh, you eat this way, you do this. Oh, that's good for you. We've got sitting on here on the table, we've got best of the bone broth, but also, tallow. Right, it's just an example. These are products that we're playing with. I'm going to give these to you. I'll bring these for you, mate. But we've got these things, and it's like these are things that were actually poo-hooed and no, and we've been taken into these margarine societies and other sort of things. Just to use an example, right? So when you in the world of chefery, I'll use that term again. You won awards, right? You had chef's hats, I think world's best pizza, like crazy experiences that you and your family had in what you did. So you were the best at what you're doing. You're right up at the best of it. Then you went into My Kitchen Rules, and that was 11 seasons, I think. And that was also the best. That was the highest rated reality show, on TV. So everything you've touched has kind of been number one and the best. But it seemed to be when you were doing things that were acceptable to the norm and acceptable to society, it was okay to be the best. It was okay to be the best chef and, play under those rules. It's okay to be the best TV presenter and have everyone laughing over dinner parties and, have they pick the participants on the show because that one's a bit psychologically dodgy and that one's a little bit. So they want some conflicts. So it was okay for you to be the best when you weren't rattling too many cages, But when you started to rattle the cages of, you wanted to be the best for others and bring the best health through, and you're on an exploration with that. And when you started to do that, that's when it invited this. I said before you stirred the studio up, but you stirred up the studio of life. You started saying things with your voice and your millions of followers that they would go, oh, Pete says this, and it was coming from the heart and, oh, wow, that can help this, that can help autoimmune diseases, this can take type 2 diabetes, it can help with that. It started to rattle the status quo. So I wonder whether there's, some comment you want to make of your experience that when all of a sudden you were aiming to be the best at bringing through great information that would perhaps change the world. I know we could pull that apart too, but change the status quo and change the predominant thinking, that invited the turmoil, the things that started to occur, the rug got tipped and the cockroaches ran out from underneath. Do you feel like there's an appropriate statement there about what you observed and what you discovered about the status quo and about this, because you've become a great observer. What did you notice about it? What was the qualities that came back at you when you started to say, I want to be the best at giving over advice that might change someone's life? Long question, but I know you know why I set it up that way.
Yeah. Well, cockroaches serve a purpose, don't they? Right?
Okay, next question. No, keep going.
No, but feel me with this one because, again, the rattling of the cages or the perceived rattling of the cages, it was never the intention, that was just the reaction to those cages being rattled, because it wasn't really about rattling the cages. I don't get up every day and go, fuck, I want to rattle those cages, that would be, a perpetrator, And that's
a shit stir.
Yeah, and I can be antagonistic. It's part of my personality. It is. I will not deny that I can play the antagonist. I can play. I can
occasionally be prickly.
I can play all the roles. That and that is our birthright. That is what we're here to experience. We're here to play it all. We're here to be cheeky. We're here to be mischievous. We're here to be kind. We're here to be caring. We're here to be an arsehole. We're here to fucking do it all, and to experience it all at the same time. Life would be pretty bland if we were just sitting there
to perhaps evolve from it all,
doing OMS all day, or boring as well if we're just shouting at everybody, like the truther movement that's out there sometimes. Everything's a threat, so I have to bang the nail every single day because I'm just looking for conflict in my life. So
something to oppose.
So going back to the cockroaches, everything exists perfectly all the time, and I think the mainstream media, for instance, or the people that got agitated through sharing of recipes or sharing of anecdotal stories of people putting their autoimmune disease into remission or reversing type 2 diabetes or becoming healthy and vibrant, there is definitely a
force?
Yeah. Again, it's only a force for those that choose to believe that it's a force, right? It exists,
and I think because you had a platform, so I had Graves' disease. I've put myself into remission, and I do this with my patients through, nutritional medicine and lifestyle, and I see this firsthand all the time. This is not uncommon, but I guess I don't have the same platform as you, and I have not received that kind of backlash. Again, I know that's a word that you probably don't like, but still in my repertoire, and I'll grow. But these things happen, but I guess you have put it out to the mainstream, and I guess what you're doing too is when we think about the conventional medical model, the reality is people are concerned that perhaps you're giving misinformation, like that is not the norm. So, for example, with thyroid autoimmune disease, you can recover, but doctors are taught in medicine the only way to deal with that is with a medication. So it's going against true beliefs, and then people sort of reacted in a certain kind of way. So you're telling the truth, and we see it. I've experienced it, but people need to do the work, and it's just, it's I guess triggering for some people. And you had a platform where you were able to provide information to so many people, and I guess that created a lot of questions and then concern and I mean, as I said, I don't know the ins and outs of it.
It challenged the control.
Yeah.
You know, the predominant thinking or level of consciousness was pretty convenient and controlled, and there's people profiting. It challenges all sorts of different things, but it certainly shook up, you know, the cockroach thing. When do you see cockroaches? When you don't realize you have them, and but you come out in the middle of the night for some reason because the kids are crying, and you turn the light on and they're everywhere, and they're all scamper back to the darkness, And so I think just using that analogy of even from a frequency point of view, that there are, certain intentions or things that exist that want to feed off of society or feed off of light, and until you shine the light on it, you don't even know it's there. It's like, someone says that, hey, you could heal that autoimmune disease, and then it goes, and they start scampering everywhere. That's we've got to wake up anyway, but that's kind of how I see it. But sorry, Pete, we cut you off.
No, it's all good, and I believe that this period of time, is beautiful, as you said, shining the light, so to speak. I'm grateful that they keep creating these stories, because it creates debate, awareness. When they do a story on me, for instance, in the mainstream papers, I'll go on because as the observer, because I'm interested to seeing what's the reaction out there. And we'll do a great example. News.com, for instance, if they do a story about me, I'll go onto their Facebook page just to see how it's received. And they'll have 600 to 1,000 comments on that one story for the day, and I'll go down the Facebook page, and the next story might be about the Royals, and that might have 50 comments, and the next one might be about Russell Crowe, and that might have 10 comments, and then there's another one about the prime ministers having a debate, and there might be 20 fucking comments. And I'm like, isn't this interesting that the story about myself still is creating so much interest and debate and conversation and awareness around, for some reason, right? This is fascinating and interesting to people for them to share their opinion. Like it's as the observer, it's pretty wild when you see that. It's like, what is that? What? And the comments are varied. Some are in support, some are against me. And it's like, wow, like this is really a fascinating thing to observe, that for some reason this energy is attracting so many different viewpoints, and it's taking center stage. And again, trust, accept, surrender, all the dots have been joined. It's playing out perfectly, because as the observer, I'm like, wow, like this is important for me. I believe it's important information. Whatever political parties in it's two wings of the same bird to a degree in this country, with slight differences. But here we have people taking an interest in self-ownership of their health. And then we have others that are definitely still wanting mummy medicine and daddy pharmaceuticals to look after them, and daddy doctors, whether you're a woman or a man doctor, and I'm not dismissing doctors, and I've always said modern medicine, ancient wisdom. That's holistic medicine. And I would never dismiss modern medicine and doctors, because that would be arrogant of me and ignorant of me, and just it would we have unlimited possibilities in which we can access the tools for us to create the life in which we choose to create, right? And some people will use the modern medical system and pharmaceuticals because that's the tool they believe in. Others will go more a natural route because that's what they believe in. I would never tell anybody to dismiss either of them, because your story as you as the individual, everything that's happened in your life and your ancestors has led you to this point, and your story is your medicine. Once you can analyze your story, your beliefs, then you can access potentially whether you need the modern medicine route because of your belief system, right? Or you take, again, a different point of view and go, you know what, I might, like Elle Macpherson recently, she released her book where she took a natural route because that was her belief. Our beliefs, like someone like Bruce Lipton, he's written books about it and documentaries about it. Our biology of belief.
Biology of belief, yeah.
Outpowers everything. Everything. You can eat all the organic, beautiful food that I can recommend to you, but if you are in a shitty relationship that you are finding, whether it be at work or at home, and you have dis-ease because of these situations that you have created for yourself by choosing that job or choosing that partner or deciding to have children, or the list goes on and on. Again, full ownership, full accountability of where you are in your life, right? Then you can still suffer disease. Food is just a tool.
Yeah, that's the mental, emotional, spiritual, energetic state.
Food is a tool, and we all know, people smoke, drink, eat junk food, they live to 100. What's their story? They probably have they're probably expressing themselves authentically. Whereas somebody else might go down the organic route, go down the medical route, have cancer at a young age or whatever it is. Perhaps they are living a reality in which they still have fears or insecurities about who they are and what they're willing to express, because that is for me, this is what I believe our purpose in life is we are all unique individuals with unlimited potential to express ourselves in whatever creative means that brings us joy and passion. I do not believe we have purpose to help anybody else or change the world or do anything. We are just here to express ourselves, our unique talents and gifts. And if we don't know what they are, then that's a great question mark of curiosity to discover what brings you joy and find those things that bring you joy to fill your cup up so you're fucking brimming with vitality and happy. and then that may have a ripple effect to others in your community. Or not, no expectation on what you are here to do, because you are just here to be your authentic self, however that is, whatever that is.
But before we move on, it's something that has been
a beautiful riff, by the way, riffed away beautifully. I love that. It's absolutely
Sorry
gold.
for the rant.
No, that's right. We
perfect.
do want to get to some other topics, but there's something that I do need to ask, because it's been raised a couple of times in what you've been saying, and I am going to paraphrase, but it is something along the lines of my truth, that you have your truth, I have my truth. And maybe I'm misinterpreting it, but I suppose I sometimes question whether that's actually a reality. Is there an absolute truth? And I think that this is very much in the vernacular now. I have my truth, you have your truth. And I see that what that actually results in is everyone walks around with their own truths. We actually don't have a cohesive society to work with because everyone's working in their own bubbles. Is there an absolute truth? Is there something that we can all agree on that this is true and we're all sort of existing within this sphere of truth that is unquestionable?
That's another whole podcast you've opened up here.
Sorry, but it's just been coming up again and again, and it's just,
Yeah, I think I use the word truth.
Because if we all have our own truths, then none of us will agree on anything, and we don't have a society.
Well, yes and no. Truth is such a fascinating word, and especially when we apply it to ownership of oneself and identity. It's that can be a very slippery slope to take on. So truth for me, to answer your question, is there an absolute truth? The absolute truth is that we are, beings of unconditional love. That cannot be ever debated. I do not think, As far as individual truths, though, of who we are and our truth, I would prefer not to use that terminology. I think our experience is a better possible definition. This is my experience, or this is my adventure. Because truth, once we have absolutes, there's a great saying that I read a long time ago. It was like, once you believe in an absolute truth or absolutes, be prepared to have your reality shattered. And, so I believe we have unlimited potential, unlimited possibilities. We all have that. That is the absolute truth. And we have the individual experience of who we are and our beliefs that nobody else will ever have, because it is unique to you. And then underneath all of that is that state on remembrance of unconditional love. And for me, it's a work in progress to reside in that space. I will be honest with you in my experience. I still judge, and I still get triggered, and I still do this, but then it's an invitation back, like, come on, you know this, and then the ego goes off on another journey. This. Settle down, Mr. Evans. Settle down. And that's what you were there on Namotu to share, Trev. I'll never forget it when you were teaching me how to kite surf. The 3 words: let it go. Fucking let it go, dude. Stop trying to control the wind. Stop trying to control. You have to let it go and trust. And so that's the balance, or the and I think that's why I'm foil surfing at the moment over the last year or two. And I explained it to a fella in the car park today. I said, if you've ever been on a slack line, that is all about finding your balance. I said, learning to foil surf is being on a slack line for an hour or two, especially if you've got the motor on the foil drive. And it is just 100% pure presence about finding your own balance in this ever-changing environment, and
all the shifting dynamics.
Yeah, and I love it because I fall off. Like today, I fell off 50 times. Still haven't found your balance yet, Mr. Evans. It's another invitation. Can you find your balance in this very shifting environment, this very challenging environment? I'm like. And every day I'm like, I'm getting a little bit better. I'm getting a little bit better. I'm getting a little bit more present. I'm getting to really feel into this adventure of finding balance. And some people do it through art. They find their balance and their harmony through art. Some people do it through music. Some people do it through their gardening. Some people do it through writing their journals or creating a new book for people to read. Some people find their harmony and balance through raising children, or going through the harmony and balance of losing a loved one, or suffering a hardship in their life or a challenge. How do we find that balance for stability, for groundedness, and understand that it's a moving field, and sometimes we will go off balance, but that's the invitation to find out what that is, to straighten ourselves back into that harmonic resonance of who we are. I will say this, I see it so often, so social media, which is one of the things that still triggers me. People have this concept that we have to wake up, or we have to ascend to be enlightened and awakened. It's like, no, there is nobody on this face of this planet that is more enlightened or awakened than anybody else. Everybody is exactly the same in that respect, in my belief. because your life challenges are exactly what you have created for you at that particular time to experience what relative. It is, right? Yeah. You do not need to meditate half an hour a day to be ascended or enlightened, like, especially if you fucking dislike it. That's like, why would you do something that you dislike? Like, that's just setting yourself up for stress.
The promise of enlightenment.
Yeah, exactly. So I like to see this game that we're all playing as a game. How do we play it with the tools that are available to us? How much enjoyment can I get out of this experience? Because that, for me, is my goal. I want to enjoy this experience for as long as possible, which is why I choose to look after my diet, which is I choose to do the activities and be surrounded or alone at certain periods of time to be around for as long as I can, because this game is the fucking best thing that I could ever have wished for, ever, which is why we're here. I believe,
We ask this question with everybody. We say, look, if with all of our information we put it together and you're able to get an extra 10, 15, 20 years of great living, why would you want it? What would you do with it? Do you feel like you just answered that question and saying, because I just love this fucking show and I want to be around for it, as it evolves? Is that why you want to be around longer?
Well, it's two parts to that, because one, I want to observe it because I find it so entertaining. I find being in nature just so exciting and nourishing and beautiful. I love cooking and sharing a meal with my wife, or if she cooks it for me, or spending time with my children. I love it. And at the same time, I'm fascinated, as you probably know, by the geopolitical state of the world as well. Like, in a way that I can watch it without being reactionary or reactive to it, or emotionally attached to any outcome. Right?
Well, if you step back and just have a look at it from a big picture, you do get the sense that, okay, we are evolving into something.
It's all stirring.
It's
like a big pot that's brewing and mixing. It's like a meal being cooked.
And the second part to that is we all get to contribute to it, and whether that's a contribution on a larger scale or just a very small scale, and it doesn't matter.
We're all an ingredient in the stew.
So we're co-manifestors in this reality, right? And isn't that so? That is so powerful. Like, some days I was like, I don't feel like co-creating anything in the external. I like this. I'm just going to buckle down here and just do my own thing. Whereas right now I'm in this creative process. Again, it hasn't come to me for probably the last 4 or 5 years, but over the last 6 months, this creative expression is just bursting at the seams. It's like, I'm doing this, and at the back of my mind, I'm like, yeah, this will probably play out for the next year or two for me, and then I'll probably hibernate into what I've created again. Because I have fallen into the trap before, where I felt like I needed to just create content for the external to be relevant, ego, and business-minded and entrepreneurial. So I'm learning to dance with this letting it go, but then trusting it when it comes, that creative external expression. And it is a dance. It's such a beautiful dance. It's because you can't push it too hard. But when it's flowing, it's like the tap's open. It's just let's go. And then sometimes it's just drip, 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 or it's fucking dry. It's like, and before I used to try to force the tap to open of creative expression, whereas now when it is just dripping or it runs dry, I sit back and just go, cool. I'm not meant to be doing this at this particular point in time. And nobody needs me, nobody needs me to be doing this either. You're
not tied to
it. I'm not
that
important.
One of the things that was often said about you, Pete, was when you were challenging the status quo with health, people would often say, have you looked at his eyes? Have you seen his health? Have you seen his face? Have you looked at the guy? Like, we look at him, he's a picture of health, and then the doctor that's saying he's off track, he'd, be overweight and struggling. It was a perfect example. You've just recently gone and spent some time with Donald Trump and RFK Jr., who's another person that's been, why are we listening to this guy over here that looks so unhealthy? And then you got RFK who's stepped into the health role, make America healthy again. And 70 years of age or getting close and ridiculously healthy,
he's
strong.
well into his 70s.
He's a real weapon, you know. He's absolutely incredible. You've spent time with him before. I've spent a bit of time with him. How was it this time catching up with those guys? Just as we wrap this up, any brief experience that you want to share of what the pulse felt like?
Yeah, I didn't meet Bobby this trip. He's busy.
Okay.
Could you imagine?
Yeah, he's damn busy.
Could you imagine?
Managing the healthcare system.
I think about it okay, he's in charge of 3 agencies and all this sort of stuff with probably 100,000 employees. Again, somebody that creates a reality. Why has he chosen to create that experience for himself? Only he knows that. Somebody like Trump, I went to Mar-a-Lago and I had dinner there with a friend of mine who's a member, and Trump was there and Elon was there, and I got to shake their hands, and that's all I said in my Instagram post. It wasn't like I had a sit down one-on-one,
Catch up.
Could you imagine their experience of reality that they have and are going through it at this time? So I sit back as the observer just going, wow, what is their manifesting strengths to position themselves into these roles? I can't even fathom what that. I'm not at that stage, and I actually have no desire to be at that stage yet or ever. I don't know. It's just wow. I love my life as it is. I love going for a surf for 2 hours a day and then hopping on the mower and cooking dinner and doing a little bit of work these days, because I feel like I've worked a lifetime already after working 80 to 100-hour weeks for 20 years in a kitchen. So part of it is you know what? The grind for me, I've experienced it. I do not wish to create that for my experience ever again. Whereas I'm observing these individuals that you just spoke about, I'm like, fuck, they're in the grind.
They're in the middle of it.
They're going hard in that reality, and obviously they must thrive off that experience. At this particular time, what I thrive off is surfing, cooking great food, being with my wife, being with my kids, hanging out with my animals. And that might sound like, for some, you've given up or you've retired or anything like that. I'm so freaking happy doing that. Yes. Why would I create a new reality to be seen and be heard in a larger scale, which would deny me those opportunities that I know what makes me happy. So I don't know whether that answered your question, but I take my hat off to everybody on their journey, whether it be Trump, Elon, Kennedy, you guys, the person down at the IGA filling their shopping trolley with whatever they're buying, no judgment, just I celebrate you all on your journey. Have a ball, have a ball, because one of the traps that you can fall into in the celebrity or fame world is believing that you're important and that you need to keep doing something for others. And I, many years ago, decided I will not be responsible for anybody else on their journey. It is not my responsibility or accountability, because what that does is that belief takes away power from other individuals on their journey. Obviously, you can be a guide, and share recipes in my context, because that's what I like to do. Whether people choose to replicate them or put them into their family meals or individual meals, so be it. Take away the expectation. Just do what makes you happy. So yeah, it was great to witness those guys and women that I got to meet over there. But yeah, good on them. You do you. You do you.
You go.
I want to go surfing.
Can I just say this has been so powerful, and we thank you so much for your time. This podcast is all about trying to help our listeners really gain more healthy years, not just about living longer, but actually having, a more fulfilled, healthy, quality life. We have lots of different speakers, and I just feel that you've brought a whole other element to the show in this podcast, and I've loved it. Of course, we're thinking the holistic approach, the nutrition as we do, the supplements for deficiencies, but I think, mental health is such a big thing these days, social media, and you have just shared a way to think about things that might actually protect people from responding in a certain way that could actually cause them disease or ill health. And I've just loved it. And thank you so much. As I said, it's when we are thinking about true health and wellness, it is a combination for some of conventional medicine, nutrition, holistic approaches. But also one thing I've taken from this, or the most important thing, is we choose our own reality. We create this, and you have articulated it beautifully, and I actually think I'm going to go back and listen to this, and just listen to you again. So thank you.
Absolute
You've
pleasure.
manifested change.
I love you, brother. I adore you, as you know. So beautiful to have you on our show. And I've been on yours a few times and we've had some fun. One of the things that I think is probably under-recognised in you have the Evolve Network, where you have an incredible back catalogue of interviews with amazing people. So even just utilising Pete as an opportunity to go and hear these other incredible people, because this man has people gravitate around him and to him that are the leaders in their fields in the world. And some of your conversations are just mind-blowing. So I tell people, go check that out. Anywhere else they should go, mate, because you really are on the edge of, you're constantly bringing things in and you do hand them on. I know you're lovingly enjoying farm life and everything else, but you do flick things on to people. You do an amazing job. Anywhere else that people need to go to see your work?
Probably not. I mean, I share recipes. My wife and I share recipes, Nick, on Instagram, so tune in there. There's not really any.
What's the handle on Instagram? Because you got knocked off of that for a while.
Yeah, Chef Pete Evans. It's just a nice little colourful page. No controversy or conspiracies in there.
Yep.
I feel like that stage of my experience, especially leading up to COVID and then during COVID, that was what my gut told me to do. Whereas now I find that sharing recipes again, it feels like that's what I should be doing again. Not should, but that's what feels right at the moment. So if you're looking for conspiracies and controversies, you probably won't find it with me these days. Not saying that it might not happen. Not saying it might not happen.
The warriors become a guardian.
It might happen again in the future. I just saw the World Health Organization just signed.
Have you seen that controversial recipe that Pete just made?
But you know what? You've done it for a purpose, not just you, but you're helping people ask questions. And I think this is the time. People are ready for I feel this anyway. People are ready for this information now, perhaps because you were early on and spoke out, before others, or before others were wanting to open their mind. You were the one who was hit hard.
Yeah.
We're going to wind it up, unfortunately.
I'm going to bring you some stuff as an excuse to come and see you and go for a foil surf.
Best of the bone, the original bone broth.
And the beef tallow, because we know you like to cook with
the
beautiful
curcumin
organic
one's my favourite.
ingredients.
The turmeric one's my favourite.
I'll bring you some other stuff too, mate. But love you, and thanks for being with us.
Thanks so much.
Love you all, and everybody that's listening. Anything I said doesn't resonate, let it go.
Yeah.
Let it go.
Let it go.
Let it go.
Great. We'll see you later.
See you guys.
Thanks,
Thank
mate.
you.